You're watching Beyond Market. Welcome. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Many thanks for joining us. Coming up on today's show, we're continuing our series on the conversations leading to Nigeria's 2019 elections. This time around, we'll discuss some concerns raised by Nigeria's former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, as well as the realities facing Nigerian voters ahead of the February elections. You can join the conversation with, just connect with us on Twitter at CNBC Africa. You can also send tweets to my Twitter handle too, at Esther O. Awoniyi. You can also use the hashtag Beyond Market and Nigeria Decides 410. Now, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo recently raised some concerns about the state of democracy in the country and the integrity of the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct free, fair and credible elections in February. Former President Obasanjo also compared the current administration to that of the Abacha era. Martin Onovo, former presidential candidate of the National Conscience Party, joins me to share his thoughts on the state of politics in the country. Martin, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Quite interesting how things are unfolding in Nigeria's political sphere. We've had another letter from former President Obasanjo, and just, I was telling you earlier, yesterday also we had a press conference from the Minister of Information, also raising concerns about acting on or based on some intelligence reports that the government has received on matters relating to security ahead of the 2019 elections. But I wanted to start with former President Obasanjo's letters, 15 pages long. What are your thoughts, and what are those issues that he raised that you would say are most or biggest concern to you?
Well, elections in Nigeria are a big issue, a very big issue, and they have been since independence. So it's not strange that we are having these issues right now. Chief Dr. Obasanjo has made remarks which are mostly accurate and statesmanly, because it is his responsibility as the leading African statesman to prevent problems before they occur. And he has highlighted the issues that could cause serious problems. You don't want the former situation we had in Rwanda. You don't want the situation we had in Kenya before. Elections, or in Zimbabwe, where elections led to serious national crisis. That sets you back security-wise. That sets you back economically. So it's better to prevent these things before they arise. So Chief Dr. Obasanjo has acted in a most statesmanly way. And the points he made are clear to everybody. I mean, let those who disagree with him show one sentence that's not correct. It's not about saying he's a corrupt man, he's a stupid man. If he's a corrupt man and you haven't convicted him in 3.5 years, it shows you're even more corrupt. So these baseless tags that anybody who disagrees with you is corrupt, when it is known and confirmed that this is the most corrupt government ever in the history of Nigeria.
He did raise some interesting points and issues, starting with INEC, the ability of INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, to conduct free and fair elections. This always comes up every time we have an election cycle in Nigeria. We always have voices who come up to say, we're not sure, we're not confident, in the ability of INEC to conduct elections in a credible manner. But we're having these conversations and, concerns again. And I'm just wondering, what is, briefly, as you understand, as you read the situation, what exactly is the problem?
I must put a background, because it's not like these problems are new. These problems are deliberately created and deliberately defended by the beneficiaries of the iniquities. In 2015, when I ran for president, 2 weeks before the elections, I granted an interview to a national newspaper, and I said the election had been pre-rigged, and the outcome had been predetermined. And it was clear. At the end of the day, 14 million people were directly disenfranchised with impunity. 13 million votes came by incident forms. So that does not guarantee that the voter was authentic. Now, with that kind of data, 13 plus 10, that's already 23. How many million votes were cast? About 30 million votes, and 23 are in question. 23 million. And the media went agog. Free and fair election. Or even foreign observers. Foreign observers in Nikon Noga.
And you know, before elections take place...
No, excuse me. Because this needs to be established. We can't cover these problems and then they repeat for 50 years. These problems need to be known and they need to be dealt with.
I hear you.
We had 1.9 million votes in Kano, no void vote. 1.9.
You know, when we're talking about the rule of law, allow me just a moment. Talking about the rule of law, you know, people can come out and make certain statements, but the thing is, at the end of the day, there's a rule of law. We have courts. There's a judiciary for
Did you go to the elections for the purpose of going to court? Do you mess this studio for the purpose of sweeping it?
So in the event that there's a fallout,
you prevent problems.
Yes, but
and that is what Obasanjo has done.
In the event that is not the outcome.
Oh, you go to court?
Yeah.
Oh, agreed. But what do you expect the courts to do? Because what the courts do, it's also in the law. The courts determine the impact on society. So when you have two evils, the courts choose a lesser evil, and politicians know that.
Okay, let's circle back. let's circle back to what former President Obasanjo's point is making here. The fact that he's not confident in the INEC. And I know that INEC has come out several times to defend their position and to guarantee and reassure Nigerians. And I'm just thinking, at the bottom line of this, many analysts say, look, let's move ahead with the elections and let's have the elections in the first place.
That's what I'm telling you. That is the principle of lesser evil. That doesn't make it right. It is a principle of lesser evil, which all of us accept.
So what can we do now?
What you can do now...
We're not confident, so what can we do now?
Chief Dr. Obasanjo also told you, if you read that letter, what you need to do. Use the card reader to authenticate not only the card, but also the voter. And he wrote it there. Where that does not work, no voting. You see, you can't understand what the man is saying if you do not understand what the issues are. He says, those who cannot be authenticated through the card reader, and their own card readers also get authenticated, because there are two steps. First, the machine recognizes your card reader. Secondly, the machine recognizes that you are the owner of the card. Because otherwise, if you're just checking the cards, I can go with your card. And that you have these stories of missing cards. You have these stories of people not able to collect their cards. You have these stories of police and buying people's cards. So these things have been arranged. Why should we keep quiet and allow it to flow? We must disrupt it.
Let's move on to what's also playing out on the political field here. Accusations and counter-accusations, especially between the main political parties, the APC, the ruling APC, and the PDP. I mentioned earlier that there was a press conference yesterday by the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, where he said that the government has intelligence reports that, you know, some elements are trying to foment trouble, conduct attacks in some certain parts of the country, and also attacks on senior government officials. What do you make of that press conference and the statements that were made?
Well, the first thing you have to look at is who said it before you look at what he said. You have to look at the message, you have to look at the messenger. If you choose to believe Lai Mohammed, that's your choice. I choose not to believe Lai Mohammed. Lai Mohammed is the same person who told us that the president was not sick, and the president said he had never been this sick in his life. So are we going to count how many times Lai Mohammed has deliberately misled us? If you choose to believe Lai Mohammed, that's your right. I choose not to believe Lai Mohammed. Secondly, let's look at the message. Opposition trying to cause violence, and you are aware. What capacity has the opposition to cause violence? Who has been causing violence in the past? The ruling party had a rally in Lagos State. How many people died? Who got stabbed? Who stabbed who? It was the ruling party members against the ruling party members in violence. So where is the source of violence? The source of violence is the ruling party. These are diversionary tactics. Chief Dr. Obasanjo has pointed at their rigging plan, which we have been shouting before, but the media won't listen. There's a rigging plan that we know about. And that rigging plan was not developed last night. It has been deliberately planned, reviewed, approved, and it is being most deliberately implemented. And it will be irresponsible for us to keep quiet.
You know, while all of this is playing out, and we're going to talk about some other issues, we still have some time left. I want to ask you this, in the midst of all of this, what does this, I mean, if we can all just take a step back and just look at how things are unfolding within the political space, what does this say about how far we've come with our democracy? We keep referring to Nigeria's democracy as a fledgling democracy. What does that say about how far we've come with democracy?
Well, the culture of democracy has not been accepted, clearly, even by the people. Because don't forget that the people follow their leadership. If the leadership does not accept the culture of democracy, the people will not accept it. Subconsciously, the people follow the leadership. So what is happening? What is happening is that we have a situation where the treasurer of the Lagos State, listen to my words, we have videos, treasurer of Lagos State, National Union of Road Transport Workers, went to Osun State and after the election claimed that they delivered Osun. He's the treasurer in Lagos. So it is not the votes that counted. We have that on video. So they delivered the elections, which is why I'm not running. Because I ran in 2015 and all the alarm that I raised, everything everyone knows is correct. Everybody kept quiet. Why should I be wasting my time and my resources? That's why I'm not running. Now, we have that on video in Osun saying that we have delivered Osun. And he also said in that video, we're going to deliver Kwara. So, we know that they delivered the election. Your votes don't count. I said so. I have run elections severally in this country. Severally. It's not once that I ran election. Votes do not count. And votes must count. And that is the real issue here. And that is what Chief Dr. Obasanjo is saying. Let votes count. Let us know that this PVC is authentic and the voter is authentic. Because otherwise, what if I clone PVCs? Is that impossible? What was the treasurer of the National Union of Road Transport in Lagos State doing in Osun? What temerity did he have when he's not an INEC official to say that they delivered Osun? What's the meaning of that? And you heard what Chief Dr. Obasanjo referred to that election, the Osun election in that letter. So these are clear facts known by everybody, but the media pretends not to know. Because if the media, mainstream media establishments like yours, had their editorial opinion based on facts, this rubbish will be checked. But you say you're being balanced. You put up a lie against the truth, and you confuse the public. What are the hard facts? We have videos.
Martin,
yes.
Thank you for your time so far, but we'll take a quick break and I'll be right back to pick up from where we left off. I've been speaking to Martin Onovo. He's a former presidential candidate of the National Conscience Party, and we have been talking about how things are unfolding within Nigeria's political space. We'll continue our conversation right after the break. To join us again. Welcome back to Beyond Market. Still with me today on the show is Martin Onovo, former presidential candidate of the National Conscience Party, and we're taking a look at unfolding events in Nigeria's political space. Martin, thank you for your time so far.
Thank you very much.
Let's quickly talk about the presidential debates we've been having. We've had the governorship debate here in Lagos, and we've had the presidential debate that didn't quite go as well as we had all expected. We didn't have President Buhari attending, and the main opposition party candidate from the main opposition party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, declined, even though we did hear that he was at the venue. What was is your reading of that, of how that played out?
Leadership requires vision. You need to see beyond now. We said clearly that General Buhari will not attend the debates. We don't work with him, but we know he will not attend. All you need is to have some common sense and to use it. Everybody knows that General Buhari, since he became president, has never stood for 1 hour. The record is that he stood for 45 minutes. I was in the 2015 presidential debate. I stood right next to the incumbent president, Dr. Jonathan. We all stood for 2 hours. There was no sitting break. President Jonathan stood for 2 hours. Professor Shonaiya stood for 2 hours, the woman. We all stood there for 2 hours. Nobody sat down for 1 minute.
And you think that's the reason why he didn't attend?
That's one of the reasons. Second reason is you saw what happened at the town hall meeting. He has an agenda which has been accused of, which is not patriotic. And he's living up to that agenda if you look at his actions. And some of his words, like the 95%, 97% versus 5% theory he proposed. This is not nobody proposed it for him, he proposed it himself, which goes contrary to his oath of office, sworn on the Quran. So he has a clear agenda which is not able to conceal. And because of that, he cannot articulate a national vision. So it will be wrong for his handlers to allow him to come there. We knew he would not come. We said he would not come. This date was fixed more than a month ago. How is it that the new excuse is that he had a schedule clash? The date was fixed. The date for the debate was fixed more than a month ago. So we know what is right. We can't continue to pretend and encourage unproductive discussions. We need to discuss what is blood or controversial, not what is clear. We saw him at the town hall meeting. The vice president clearly disgraced him by not letting him answer any question. Showing through his body language and through a question will be asked to the president, the vice president will jump in. Showing he was trying to shield the man, and he knew that the man was going to disgrace the party. Why will you push a 77-year-old this far? When I'm 77, I'm not going to be in that place. In 2023, he's going to be 81, according to him. And that's who you want for president?
Let's quickly talk about...
Come on.
Let's quickly talk about the other political parties, apart from the two in focus, APC and the PDP. We had other political parties, and we had some other candidates coming up for the first time, the likes of Fela Durotoye, but this time we also have Obi Ezekwesili and some other names. And there have been several conversations about them forming a major coalition, one big party, as it were, to create, as some have called it, a good third, another big, a credible third force, third option for Nigerians. And that hasn't quite also played out well. What are your thoughts in terms of how that has progressed, and concerns that were raised that those parties, there wasn't exactly unity among them?
Clearly. To
come together and just, fuel just one candidate. So at the end of the day, we don't have a split vote. What are your thoughts on that?
I was in the National Political Summit convened by the Red Card movement over that. So I participated. I'm the right person to ask.
Okay.
There is a trust issue among Nigerians. And there's also the individualistic issues where people don't want to use objective criteria and accept that they may not be the best option. So that played out. Those are cultural issues. And that also encouraged me not to go on. Because to confront the abuse of power by the incumbent, you need enormous capacity and resources. So if you had a third force that aggregated everybody else, that would be strong enough to confront the incumbent. And that is the idea you saw in CUPP, where you have right now 50-something parties trying to push the candidacy of Alhaji Abubakar Atiku. That's the right thing to do. Because the ruling party in Nigeria is very strong. Because the constitution of Nigeria makes the president of Nigeria the most powerful president in the world. He holds 5 positions: head of state, head of government, chairman, Federal Executive Council, president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It makes him very powerful. And it was deliberately done. And people like us supported it when it was done. Because the whole idea was to empower a president to push development. Now you empower a president and he pushes against development. So that is the tragedy we have seen. It was deliberately done that when we give so much power to the president, he will be able to push a national agenda. Now we gave him so much power and they're using it to push against the national agenda.
For the electorate themselves, watching how things are unfolding, and this time, we have so many other candidates, other options, as it were. How do you think they're also interpreting what's going on from your interactions with? I know that you're also an active player.
I think we have to be practical. We were 14 in 2015. I'd like to give an example. And what did the National Debate Group do? They put us in 2 groups, 7 in each group. Nice idea. Now you have 73. So even if you put 7 per group, you're going to have 11 groups. So the number is a little bit untoward. Now, you can, based on acceptable objective criteria, screen. For example, I gave one indication. I said, any political party that has its national chairman as its presidential candidate is a one-man briefcase party. Disregard them. If you can't find somebody, you only have one person for every position. You are not a political party for a country of 200 million people. If you are so power-centered that you cannot reason with one additional person, how can you reason with 200 million Nigerians? So if they had used objective criteria, transparently, that would have helped. Because one of the problems with the debate you're talking about is, what was the criteria for selecting the 5? Was it alphabetical order? Was it number of candidates? You should inform me. You belong to the media. You're supposed to inform and educate me. If you don't know the criteria, I shouldn't know. Because I'm not a candidate in this election. I was a candidate before. So these are the, what will I say, clandestine things they do to promote their own favored candidates. Why will a candidate of PPN, Dr. Al-Mustafa, be excluded? In record, they have one of the top 5 highest number of candidates for the election. So you need to be clear with your criteria. We need to know this criteria. And the way it is now.
And doesn't anybody, why hasn't anybody, I know that there have been, some of these have been challenged, but we never see the end of it.
IPAC, Inter-Party Advisory Committee, has challenged the appointment of Amina Zakari. Has anybody listened? Because there's a deliberate plan. It is developed, it is reviewed, deliberate to rig this election, and the outcome, let the heavens fall, will come out only one way.
Do you think that the Amina Zakari controversy will continue throughout the elections? Do you think that it will continue to cast shadow?
Chief Dr. Obasanjo still raised it.
Yeah, I know, I saw that in
Alhaji Buba Galadima is Buhari's political soulmate. He was National Secretary of Buhari's CPC. So, Alhaji Buba Galadima has said, this is not acceptable, and it will not be acceptable to us.
Do you foresee, looking down the road at the end of these elections, because we got to that road in 2015 where people began to wonder and ask themselves, when we get the outcome of the result, will those who did not win take it in good faith?
Why would anyone accept what is wrong in good faith?
Just a moment, because all of that has to be proven in the first place. But just a moment.
You need a proof of Amina Zakari. There's an admission by the president that they are related by birth, by presidency.
When we get to that road, do you fear that, or what do you foresee in terms of how this could play out, the outcome? Are we going to find ourselves in a situation where we have those who didn't win, just, how do I put it, heating up the polity, as it were?
What do you mean by heating up the polity? Fighting for justice cannot be heating up the polity. Use the right expressions. No.
When we get to that road, are we going to find ourselves in a situation where our democracy, the very foundations of our democracy, will be threatened?
Oh, clearly, they are being threatened right now.
To the point where we'll be in crisis.
They are being threatened right now, because when you arrange this kind of skewed electoral process, very skewed, from the very beginning, each stage has been skewed in favor of the ruling party. Appointment of INEC officials, skewed in favor of the ruling party. Contrary to the precedents. Do you have time? I will count the precedents.
Why isn't anybody going to court challenging all of this?
If you go to court, the time you spend in court, the election will be finished before you come out of court.
We're operating under the rule of law.
Yeah, but under the rule of law,
that is your option.
You also have a timeline for the election. Why do you have to go to court over every issue?
So what else would you do?
Why would you have to go? No, you can take this kind of political action. What do you mean? The people who protested in Venezuela, there are no courts there. You look at your options. You weigh which one will achieve your result within time. Yeah, after all, even in law...
I say that because of the rules of democracy.
The rules of democracy allow protest.
Yeah, of course, you can protest, but to what end? You keep protesting.
The rules of democracy allow advocacy.
Yes, obviously.
The rules of democracy allow... advancing your own positions, which is what we're doing.
So
and these are positions that are universal.
So protests, going to court, and continuous protests.
Yes, and you can use all.
Okay. So, but for the election, what are your hopes? What are your expectations? I know what your concerns are.
The way INEC is going, Nigeria is set to waste 242 billion in a charade. In a charade, an empty hoax. This needs to be checked before it is too late. We have over 3 weeks to correct ourselves. Chief Dr. Obasanjo has said exactly what needs to be done. We need to remove underage voting.
Okay.
We need to remove multiple voting. We need to remove voting by proxy. We need to remove disenfranchisement, direct disenfranchisement.
Martin, we're going to have to leave it there. We're actually out of time. Thank you so much for your time today and, of course, sharing your perspective and thoughts on how things are playing out on in Nigeria's political sphere. I've been speaking to Martin Onovo. He's a former presidential candidate of the National Conscience Party. Well, that's our show for today. You can always watch all previous episodes of Beyond Market on our website at cnbcafrica.com, and you can stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Market. You can also follow my Twitter handle too at Esther Awoniyi. From myself and the team, do have a wonderful evening.